Hi, I'm Sheridan Voysey, and thank you for joining me for this important session on how we can solve the friendship crisis. I'm an author, speaker, broadcaster, and the unexpected founder of friendshiplab.org. I was going to write a book about adult friendship about 3 years ago, and it's blossomed into this charity because the need is just so great. We will be rolling out evidence-based courses that you can use in your churches, in your workplaces, or just do yourself. We will be doing arts collaborations, podcasts, documentaries, and so much more. So I invite you to come and sign up for updates. If you do, within seconds, in your inbox will be a little email with 3 tools you can use straight away to deepen and enrich your friendships. September 2022, thousands of us queued for up to 13 hours at a time to see the Queen lying in state. Those of us who didn't go to London to be part of that watched live coverage of those who did. And after a few hours of watching people standing in a queue, we started to cotton on to the fact that this wasn't the most riveting television of all time. And so just as we were about to switch off, one lucky journalist found one beautiful story that resulted in headlines like this. Romance blooms for pair who met in queue to see the Queen lying in state. It was a lovely story of Cupid shooting his arrow at Jack and Zoe. They had met at 10:30 the previous night and had been together ever since, talking all through the night, all through the morning, laughing together, sharing crisps, eating each other's croissants, finding they had so much in common. They described their meeting as, quote, a blessing in disguise. They had even started using we language. We like this, we like that, we plan on doing this. They had even planned a second date, attending the Queen's funeral together the next day. A romantic day out, if ever there was one. Twitter exploded. This romance went viral. This was the great British love story. This could be the sequel to Love Actually. And then the next day, we got another set of headlines, and we plunged further into grief because it turned out that, unfortunately, Jack already had a girlfriend, and Zoe was actually getting married next year. What we thought was romantic was actually purely platonic. Jack and Zoe had only become friends. By the end of this session, I hope you will realize how wrong that storyline was and why it's actually a symptom of the greater crisis that we are talking about in this session. Friendship has been overlooked. Everything is focused on romance, and we need to change that. Let's talk about the problem, because we've got one. And it's right across the world. Here in the United Kingdom, 20% of people have no close friends, and as many as 10% have no friends at all. And this is echoed in other countries as well. In Australia, 25% of people say they have no one to talk to or to turn to, and 30% say that they are not part of a friendship group. In the United States, around 20% of all adults aged 18 and above, it's even worse for the ages of 35 and above, say that they are always or often lonely. And the number of people saying they have no close friends has quadrupled since 1990. This is a huge problem because, as Robin Dunbar, one of the world's leading experts on friendship, says, friendship is the single most important factor influencing our health, well-being, and happiness. So what is causing this terrible paucity of friendship in the Western world right now? Well, we could talk about so many different forces all kind of swirling together right now to make this happen. We could talk about the excessive individualism that has us all focusing inward rather than outward at this present cultural moment. We could talk about the political polarization that is tearing us apart. We could talk about the isolating effects of smartphones and social media. We could talk about the rise in single-person occupancy households, which have grown over the decades. We can talk about the decline of community institutions that used to bring us back together, the membership of which has declined significantly in recent years. We could talk about the loss of transcendent values. Once people used to get their meaning and purpose from connecting with something bigger than them, and now they primarily get it from one thing, their job. And so that can lead us to workaholism as we try to wring out as much meaning and purpose as possible from this thing that maybe can't give us all the meaning and purpose that we as human beings need. We at Friendship Lab surveyed 1,000 people to find out what were the practical barriers that got in the way of their friendships, and the results were really interesting. We asked this question: in your experience, what are the biggest barriers to making new friends? Look at what were the first 2 responses: my own lack of time or energy, or other people's lack of time or energy. It's not huge rocket science we're talking about here. We're talking about time. The next one, finding people I have things in common with, then shyness at talking to strangers, lack of trust in others due to past hurt. That's a big one that we can explore. All of these things, though, are actually surmountable problems. We can deal with these barriers. We asked a second question. So not just about making new friends, but what about maintaining your friendships? What are the biggest barriers there? And again, look at the number one response, finding time to see each other. And then the second, staying close when we live in different cities. Mobility is the mark of the modern age, and it makes friendship hard. But notice that third one, managing religious or theological differences. Yes, it's third, but look at how small the response rate was. It's a distant third. So the barriers are they're not rocket science. In fact, what you would find if you combine our research with other research is really there are four main practical barriers, and that is busyness, mobility, shyness, and then lack of trust. And we can work with those things. But there are other barriers at play as well. We could call them cultural barriers. These are mindsets. These are kind of ingrained habits. And I would like to suggest that they really are about three Greek words that have been in competition with each other. Three Greek words which you no doubt already have heard of. Eros, agape, and philia. Eros, for our conversation here, we will call romantic love. Agape is sacrificial, self-giving love, a kind of love that doesn't require anything in return, a kind of love that loves somebody even if they're unlovable. And then philia is the Greek word for friendship. And these three words have been in competition for a lot of years. Can I suggest to you that in our culture, philia has been pushed out by eros? It's not hard to see. Open up your phone, open up Spotify, look at your music playlists. I challenge you to find one song, just one, on your playlist about friendship. If you do, it'll be a mere drop in an ocean of love songs. How about Valentine's Day? It's a day that's celebrated with chocolates and roses right across the globe. Everybody knows the date of Valentine's Day. Do you know the date of International Friendship Day? In our school curriculum, we have sex ed, but not a lot of friendship ed. In our newspapers, we have dating columns. We don't have a lot of friendship columns. And all of this adds up to this idea that, yes, of course, Jack and Zoe meet in a queue. Of course, it's going to be romance that the story is about because that's what we've been nurtured to expect. And then what happens when we find out it's just mere friendship? We're all disappointed. Friends, Jack and Zoe actually achieved something profoundly amazing. And by the end of the session, you'll discover what it is. And they did it in record time. We in the church have also focused very heavily on eros. We have wonderful books and courses, whole ministries set up focusing on dating and marriage and parenting. And I thank God for every single one of them. But you name me one resource, one course, one ministry that's been out there about friendship. And that's what Friendship Lab is hopefully going to fill the space of. We have neglected this most precious of relationships. But it leads me to a second force. In church, philia has been pushed out by agape. And you know what? There's really good reasons for that. When you think about it, really good reasons. Because agape is that eye-watering, lovely love that loves people, even if they're unlovable, that loves the lost and the least and the lonely, that goes out, doesn't respect anything in return, just simply loves on them. This is the love of the cross, who while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. This is agape love. As a result of that, some thinkers over the centuries have been a little bit suspicious of friendship. Perhaps the one with the kind of the harshest words has been the 19th century Christian philosopher Soren Kierkegaard, who said that because friendship, philia, because it required something in return, you can't really have a friendship unless the two people actually are reciprocating that love, because it is wanting something in return, because it's preferential, because I choose you over somebody else and you choose me over somebody else. He said, well, that's not New Testament agape love, which isn't preferential, it's indiscriminate, which doesn't require reciprocity, it loves anyway. In fact, he went as far as to say, philia is not just selfish, it's idolatrous. Ouch. That has filtered down into all kinds of sermons over the years. In fact, if I was to ask you how many sermons you've heard about agape love, I'm sure, and I hope, you've heard so many that you've lost count. But if I was to ask you how many sermons you've heard about friendship, I reckon it would be hard for you to count them. You wouldn't even be able to probably use a couple of fingers. We have so neglected this as a result. Now, here we are, spring harvest. Our theme this year is on the upside down, the flipped kingdom, the kingdom of the Sermon on the Mount, the kingdom of the Gospel of Matthew. And you'll probably say to me, hang on, Sheridan, in Matthew chapter 5, Jesus didn't he say himself, if you only love those who love you back, what reward are you going to get? That's been one of the key verses that people have actually said is the reason why friendship maybe isn't a gospel value. It's much more to do with agape love. Well, I actually think that can be challenged significantly for a number of reasons. But I can see how this has kind of filtered down into my own life over the years. In my primary school years, I was a bit of a loner kid. I was the one who was walking around in circles, walking around the schoolyard, always moving, to cover up the fact that I didn't have a group to sit down and be part of. I was the kid who was born in Australia, but born to British parents. So I actually had a British accent. So I was beaten up in the schoolyard for being a Pommy, which is ironic because if you know the acronym, Pommy actually stands for Prisoner of Mother England, which actually means that the Australians would be the prisoners, not the English people. So anyway, it didn't work. But I was beaten up, for having this English accent. I was on the edges. I was on the fringes. Now, things got better for me in high school, and I had some friends in high school, and then I became a Christian at the age of 18 and have wonderful friends that I actually have to this day who I met back in those early Christian years. And I think as a result of those early experiences, the Spirit of God and the Word of God kind of took my early experiences and gave me a real sensitivity for people on the fringes. And I wanted to bring those people into the heart and the core of community. And I think that was a really good thing. By the time I'd reached my 30s, though, things had become very unbalanced. It got to the stage where my wife looked at me at one stage and she said, the only people we ever have time with, or time for, and spend time with, are people you're trying to help. And she was right. Because I had ringing in my ears all of those sermons that I'd heard over the years about how we weren't to have Christian cliques, we weren't to have Christian bubbles, and we were to go out to the least and the lost and the lonely. We were to bring them in. And if I was spending time with friends, that felt almost selfish. Hello, Kierkegaard. And that was actually detrimental to me. By the year 2008, Merrin and I were sitting in a fostering and adoption seminar, and the straight-talking seminar leader was saying, look, fostering and adoption is quite difficult. You're going to need a support group around you. And then she said this, who can you call at 2 a.m. when everything has gone wrong? I remember the pen hovering over the piece of paper because I didn't know who to write into the blank. And it's at that point I realized I needed to get intentional about friendship because I hadn't been intentional at all, because I thought that somehow it was selfish. Research shows about 30% of church leaders don't have any close friends because they're so busy spending so much time at the outer levels, the outer circles of relationships, trying to do exactly the same thing. That will lead to burnout, my dear friend. We need to focus on our own friendships as well. Jesus needed philia. And I'm not just talking about the 12 disciples. And I'm not just talking about Peter, James, and John, his inner core of 3. And I'm not just talking about his group of 72 disciples, his kind of big group that he was a part of. Jesus needed philia in Gethsemane. Remember, when the 3 had let him down, he said, I need you to be there for me. I need something from you. I need you to pray with me for 1 hour, and I come back and you've fallen asleep. But even beyond that, there's 3 people that were Jesus' friends that were not part of his ministry group. They weren't part of the 3, they weren't part of the 12, they weren't part of the 72. And those 3 people are Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, the siblings of Bethany. You go and read Luke chapter 10 and John chapter 11, and you see the relationship that is happening there between Jesus and those 3 people. These aren't his ministry colleagues. These are his friends. When Jesus said, if you only love those who love you back, what reward will you get? I had somehow missed that word only. It's okay to have reciprocal, preferential friendships. So much more to explore, which we will do in Friendship Lab. Okay, so it raises a good question. What is a friend? Let's work on a definition. And around about now, I would love to kind of pull out the old Jim Hayes joke. A friend is someone who helps you move house. A best friend is someone who helps you move a body. Or Groucho Marx. A friend is someone who visits you in jail. A good friend is someone who bails you out, and a best friend is someone who turns to you in the cell and says, "That was so much fun." Here is the definition that we use at Friendship Lab. A friend is someone I can talk to, depend on, grow with, and enjoy. And each one of those 4 elements is really important. Someone to talk to about the big things and the little things, about the football scores and the holiday plans, but also about maybe the deepest secrets that we've never told anybody else. Someone to depend on. They are the 2 a.m. friends that we can call when life has gone wrong. Someone to grow with. Aristotle said that friendship is the school of virtue. We've got proverbs that say that iron sharpens iron. There's a whole thing about when I get together with you and you get together with me. At its best, friendship should make us bigger people. As you encourage me and I encourage you, as I help you follow your calling, as you call me out on some things that perhaps I need to be called out on so that I can grow into the image of Christ and become all that I'm meant to be so I can retake on the image of God. And someone to enjoy. Friendship is not friendship really unless there's laughter involved. Maybe it's just because I enjoy your conversation or you make me laugh, or maybe because we both share a deep love of moody European films with subtitles. Whatever it might be, we enjoy each other. Now that definition is really important, and it's also important to say that all of this is mutual. It's not just that I can talk to, depend on, grow from the time I spend with you and enjoy you. It's that you can do all of those things and enjoy all of those benefits from me as well. Friendship has to be reciprocal. I can be friendly to you, but unless you reciprocate, we don't have a friendship. So we have explored the problem. We've looked at the cause. We've mapped out a definition. Now let's start looking at a solution. How can we focus on the problem and get it solved? I want to give you 3 things. Firstly, we need to see friendship as a sacred calling because we've overlooked it, and we need to reinvigorate it as a sacred calling for what it is. Scripture has a lot to say about the blessed relationship that is friendship. We've got lots of proverbs. We have got wonderful portrayals of friendship like David and Jonathan and Ruth and Naomi, Jesus with the Bethany siblings. We've got wonderful portrayals of that, but the theme reaches its pinnacle in John chapter 15, where Jesus says some very famous words that you will probably know off by heart. I no longer call you servants, because a servant doesn't know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends. For everything that I learnt from my Father, I have made known to you. Everything I've learnt from my Father, I've made known to you, I've disclosed to you, I've shared to you, I've talked to you about. Someone to talk to. He goes on, my command is this, love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down his life for one's friends. That to me sounds like someone to depend on. You didn't choose me, but I chose you, and I appointed you so that you might go and bear fruit, fruit that will last. Fruit grows, someone to grow with. And he says, if you keep my commands, you will remain in my love. I've told you this so that my joy may be in you, and your joy may be complete. Someone to enjoy. Our definition of friendship is right there in John chapter 15, Jesus' great exploration of friendship. To have a friend is a sacred trust. To be a friend is a sacred calling. Let's put it in our minds and hearts in the appropriate position that it has. Secondly, let's develop a genuine interest in other people. A genuine interest in other people. Each person you come across is a universe of experiences and stories and victories and challenges and failures and lessons to pass on to you. Each person you come across in the street, as bland as they may be, as bland as you might look like to them, is someone with such richness and depth, with so many riches to be able to share to you and share with you, untold delight and insight perhaps to offer you, maybe even your next job. Research says acquaintances are the best people to help us find our next job prospect. Go and investigate that universe. Find out what makes these people tick. Find out some stories about who these people are and what they love. You do this, and it will inspire you to ask some great questions. At Friendship Lab, we talk about 3 levels of questions. Questions around who they are, what they love, and what they hope for. We can explore all of that in the course. It'll also encourage you to listen deeply to these people, find out who they are and what they're about. Listen to them, and then it'll help you to play conversational ping pong. You know what it's like? Sometimes a conversation starts and then somebody just takes it on and they keep on talking about their side and you don't get another word in for hours on end. Best way to have a friendship is to have conversational ping pong. You share a little bit, you pass it back to them, they share a little bit, they pass it back to you. Let's develop a genuine interest in other people. And then intentionally cultivate our connections. And the key word here is intentional. There is this myth that friendship is organic, that it just happens. Well, no, it doesn't. After the blessed years of school and university, when we all were on the same timetable, when we were all in proximity to each other, friendship doesn't just happen organically. We have to be intentional about it. So we need to prioritize friendship in our diaries. Yes, of course we're busy. Yes, we're all busy. I'm the first one to put my hand up and say guilty as charged. But do you know how many hours Ofcom now tells us that each average person here in Britain, and no doubt in other parts of the world as well, spends watching television and streaming video alone? 5 hours and 16 minutes. That's before we talk about radio, podcasts, scrolling, Instagram, and everything else. Just watching TV and watching streaming video. 5 hours, 16 minutes. So I think it's fair to say, if you have time for Facebook, Instagram, TikTok and Twitter, Netflix, iPlayer, Disney Plus and Amazon Prime, if you have time for YouTube Shorts, Instagram Stories, Reels and LinkedIn videos, if you can binge watch The Crown, if you can watch endless reruns of Big Bang Theory, you have time for friends, okay? We need to then be intentional about how a friendship forms. And I want to give you a little model here so you can see just how friendship does develop. We start off as an acquaintance. Maybe you work with somebody and you are doing what they call role-limited interaction. Maybe you're a salesperson and you just talk to the accountant at the office. Well, you start off with that role-limited interaction. You're just talking about work stuff. But if you were to venture out a bit, you can move into the next phase, which is friendly relations. That's where you actually start casual conversation. You don't just talk about the accountancy. You don't just talk about the sale. You talk about perhaps what you did on the weekend. What was the highlight? Was there a low light? What do you normally do on weekends? Is there some sort of hobbies there that you're a part of? You're looking for commonality. Don't let anybody talk you out of small talk. Small talk leads to medium talk, leads to big talk, and it's the best thing to look for commonality together. Keep on doing that and you'll move into the third phase, which is nascent friendship. We haven't gotten to friendship itself yet. We're still in the early stages. And that's where you may meet outside of your role context. So you don't just, talk in the lunchroom at work. You actually go out for coffee. You have a drink in the pub on a Friday night. And you start to share a little bit more about those things that your life involves around. Move into friendship now. Finally, when you're sharing more time together, maybe you've set up a regular time to meet up, and maybe you've discovered you both like moody European films with subtitles. Maybe you both like tennis, and you say, let's get together every week, every fortnight to share that together. And you start sharing more and more of your lives together. Keep on moving in this direction, and you will go to deeper levels of friendship, where your support has been proven, your trust has been proven, because you have an ever-deepening sharing of lives. Now, there is one more phase that is important to let you know about, and that's waning friendship. All of us have waning friendships. Very few of our friendships rip. Most of them just drift for lack of conversation, lack of connection, lack of keeping in touch. And so if you're looking for friendships, by the way, if you're wanting to reinvigorate this area of your life, this is a great place to start because you've got a history with these people. Go and pick up where you left off. And if that doesn't work, then start at 3 at the nascent friendship stage and then continue to move on as well. There's so much more I could talk to you about when it comes to this. We'll explore all of this in the Friendship Lab course, but let's just talk about the power of friendship and end on all the benefits that come from having a friend. Friendship is a buffer against extremism. That has been proven. It is a weapon against prejudice. We've got PhDs to prove this. It is a safeguard against addictions. It is a booster to immune systems. It decreases anxiety and depression. Isn't that a wonderful thing for us to know in our current mental health epidemic? It increases our threshold for pain. People have likened it to the power of morphine. It even extends our lifespan by about 30%. Friendship shapes our characters and it affirms our identities and it confirms our callings. It energizes us to live and serve. We need it. We need it. And not just that, friendship has transformed history. It was a bunch of friends who got together, who were interested in angles and lines and numbers, and they gave us mathematics. It was a bunch of friends who got together. They called themselves the Holy Club, and they ended up becoming what? The Methodist Church. It's a bunch of friends who got together, called themselves the Clapham sect, ended up bringing an end to the legal slave trade. It's a bunch of friends who got together on a Thursday afternoon in a pub. They called themselves the Inklings, gave the world some of the best stories we've ever read. Friendship is powerful. Friendship is the best foundation for eros, and friendship is the ultimate fulfillment, I believe, of agape. Will we need agape love in heaven when everything is perfect? And I don't need to give self-sacrificial love to you because you don't need to be sacrificed for because you're sinless. I'm not too sure if we're going to have agape love in heaven, but I know for sure we're going to have deep and rich philia. And so, come and join us at Friendship Lab, and let's return to Jack and Zoe. Jack and Zoe, who we all were disappointed, hadn't fallen in love, had just simply stepped into friendship. Let's go back to our stats. 1 in 5 Brits have no close friends. 1 in 10, no friends at all. These guys formed a friendship. That's good news. That's something to celebrate. We could go further. Study shows it takes about 50 to 60 hours of socializing to move from acquaintance to friendship. These guys did it in just a few hours, standing in a queue, waiting to see the Queen in state. And we can go further again. They even formed a cross-sex friendship. Even trickier again, no doubt enabled by the fact that they both had romantic partners and had other barriers in place. Friends, can I just ask that you and I would place friendship in the sacred position that it is? We would pursue it. Because we've got quite a few great British love stories, but maybe we could have a few more great British friendship stories.